Okay, good afternoon. I'm Mark Schmidt with CR Tech, and we're talking about what's new in TD Direct. This shouldn't take very long. Hopefully it will save you a lot of time though. Uh, um, so I guess we'll just go ahead and get started. So what we're going to start talking about is what currently happens when, and then we'll get into what's changed. When we click Synchronize in the TD Direct importer, the first thing it does is open the SC doc, opens TD Direct. And then it will update any driving dimensions that may or may not be in the TD Direct document. It will create a mesh, import that mesh to Thermal Desktop, and apply any thermal tags, such as domains, materials, and so on. Execute the mesh editor action scripts if you have any. And then we come to the new part, which is it will store the node and element information back to the SC doc. So it's effectively going to be saving the mesh for you, which is going to open up. It's going to make it much faster for you as we go through iterations. But again, it's stored on the SC doc, and that allows us to introduce a new button, which is Reuse Mesh. And in the TD Direct importer, if you click Reuse Mesh, it will open the SC doc, and then it will use that node and element information stored on the SC doc, so it won't create a new mesh. It will then apply any thermal tags, execute the mesh editor action scripts. So if you're taking 10 minutes to mesh, now you don't need to redo that as long as nothing, no mesh settings have changed and the geometry hasn't changed, which we found is very, very common. Working with just changing a material property or adding domains, you don't need to remesh anymore. You can also use this to create a driving dimension as long as the dimension's unchanged. In other words, if you have a hole with a radius of 5 and you set that to a symbol, which is a value of 5, you don't need to remesh because it'll be the same thing. But if you do change the value as you create the driving dimensions, then you would have to do a full synchronize. So the importer, what it looks like now in 6.1 is over on the right. You can still have the synchronize button to, as it's always done, create a new mesh and everything, and then we have reuse mesh. Now there is a little bit of a caution here in that as you update to 6.1, we in the past did not save that mesh to the SC doc, so you would have to do a full synchronize at least once on each document, so it would save the mesh, and then you can do reuse mesh. So just once after you update for each mesh you have. We also have the actions only button, and this will execute any mesh editor action scripts on domains. It does not need to open the SC doc at all. So whereas in 6.0, if you realized that you wanted to set a section of your model to a boundary condition and you didn't have a domain there, you would first have to add the domain, synchronize to get a full mesh, create the mesh editor action scripts on that domain, and then synchronize again. Now you don't need to do any full synchronize for that. You just add the domain, say reuse mesh, create the action script, and then do actions only. So what might take 20 minutes will now take 2. We also have change input. And this will redirect the TD Direct importer to a new target file. You can also select whether this is a relative path or an absolute path. So whether it's // users, whatever it is, or just the relative path from where the DWG file is. And this avoids deleting the importer whenever any paths have changed, or often handing a model off to someone else who might not have the same directory structure you have. You don't have to delete the importer and recreate it. Moving past the importer, we've added geometric volumes. Solids can be tagged as geometric volumes. This is a thermal tag inside TD Direct. That's just a checkbox. And these elements will be created, but they will be set to not generated in Thermal Desktop. So nodes and conductors won't be created for Cinda. The elements will exist, but just not in the thermal solution. Now, this is not really a new function. You could have done this in Thermal Desktop if you wanted to, sort of manually. But this is just a shortcut for it. And now, why would you want to do that? Well, we have compartments, and particularly complex tanks work very well with TD Direct, so you can mesh a complex tank. But with compartments, you don't actually want it's a volume. It's not really used for the thermal modeling of it. You can also use this to create matched meshes with a separation distance. For example, we use these. We have an example of thermoelectric coolers and generators. All right, then on to the mesh editor action scripts. We've added some more types. You can see over on the right, such as surface insulation, surface multiplier, solid multipliers. And this allows for more specific modification. For example, you can modify the insulation on groups of surfaces without changing their optical properties, materials, and thicknesses. So only insulation will be changed if you select surface insulation. The example I have shown here is change conduction or density multipliers on solids without changing the material property. So this could be several submodels and several different materials, and you can see that section is grayed out. All you would be changing is the density and conduction multipliers. We've also added merge nodes, so you can merge nodes within a single domain using a thermal desktop operation that allows for a tolerance, whereas the merge in TD Direct is perfectly aligned. This is more of the thermal desktop operation merge nodes, merge coincident nodes. We've added a local mesh control. Previous versions included the local mesh control merge if globally matched. We've now added match if globally merged. We also simplified and clarified that interface. You can see over on the right, it's an option to override. So if you set this on a surface or a solid or an edge, it will always be meshed, or always be matched, or always be merged, depending on which one you select there. And of course, these local mesh controls have no effect if you're creating independent meshes for contacting geometry. We also know that the match if globally merged option will be a little bit more stable. We know it's run into the occasional problem of a matched interface causing some problems. We think this option will be more stable. What you may find is that tutorials are no longer provided as part of the installation. This is not that we're removing them or anything. It's just that we're trying to make the installers a little bit smaller. They're still available on crtech.com. You can go to trainings, tips and samples, search for all the tutorials you want, and it'll take you to our forum where you can download the files and instructions. Right now, it's the same ones that were included in 6.0 and 5.8 as well. You do have to be registered on our website, so if you have not done so, please register for a free account. You don't get spammed or anything like that. Every month or two, we send out a newsletter. And as always, support is available at support@crtech.com. And at that point, we come to the end of the presentation, unless you have any questions.